meeting of the RTM will come to order. It's Monday, May 15th, 2017 at 7 p.m. at Senior Center. We're here to continue our May 1st budget discussion. Welcome back, everybody. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Representative Adams. Here. Bailey.
Here.
Baker. Burrell.
Here.
Bauer.
Here.
Burgos. Casper.
Here.
Dean Chinbrot.
Here.
Evans.
Here.
Frickman.
Here.
Garcia. Gilly.
Here.
Hubbard. Kent.
Here.
Longino. Laughlin.
Here.
Marr. Marley.
Here.
Massett.
Here.
McCabe.
Here.
McDermott.
Here.
Merritt.
Here.
Nault.
Here.
Nugent.
Here.
Aubry.
Here.
Parker.
Here.
Pasqualini.
Here.
Powers.
Here.
Quinn.
Here.
Sleeker Hussant.
Here.
Steinford. Irma Streeter. Jim Streeter. Swindell. Wagner. Watrous.
Here.
Wells.
Here.
Williams. Wilson.
Here.
And Newsom is 28 present, sir.
There are 28 people present. I declare a quorum. So I'll let you know that Representatives Irma and Jim Streeter, Representative Swindell, and Representative Wagner all said they, excuse me?
And Hubbard.
And Representative Hubbard, that's right, said that they could not be here tonight. So we will continue. I'll make one communication quickly. After we're done with all of our accounts tonight, after we're done, we want to have a discussion about the information that Mayor Flax brought up at the last meeting, because we're going to be voting on the education budget on Thursday. I want to make sure everybody's had their say and we understand where we're all coming from, because we're not going to have a brawl here in the RTM next Thursday. So let's brawl amongst ourselves tonight. So we could sell tickets and make money. It'd be a great fundraiser. We will, yes, Parks and Rec, you're on the hook to organize this. So the first account, Representative Wilson, sorry. Account 1064, Parks and Recreation on page 182 in your budget book.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Recreation Committee met on April 18 at the Groton Senior Center. Chairman Jonathan Wilson called the meeting to order at 6:30. Members present were Representative Wilson, Representative McDermott, and Representative McCabe. Representatives Garcia, Laughlin, Wagner, Dean Chinbrot, Longino, Streeter were all absent. There was not a quorum. Also present were Mark Berry, Director of Town Parks and Recreation Department, Jerry Loken, Manager of Recreational Services, Eric Morrison, Manager of the Shennecossett Golf Course and Grounds, Mary Todd Riley, Supervisor of the Groton Senior Center, and Todd Goodhue, Golf Pro at the Shennecossett Golf Course. As the committee did not have a quorum, the chairman stated the deliberations were unfortunately canceled for the evening. After review of the calendar, it was requested to reschedule the committee meeting to May 3rd at 6:30 at the Groton Senior Center. Mr. Berry tentatively had that date clear. Unable to conduct any other business, Representative McDermott moved to adjourn. Representative McCabe seconded, no discussion. Motion passed unanimously. Meeting was adjourned at 6:45, and that was respectfully submitted. I move the acceptance of the April 18 minutes.
So you didn't have a quorum.
I did not have a quorum.
Okay. So
Did he have another meeting? It's a report. It's his report. He did one meeting.
Just because you don't have a quorum just means that you can't conduct business. But
I'm
we
sorry, what
did.
was the date on that?
April 18.
Okay.
I was just making the statement that just because we didn't have a quorum and weren't able to conduct business, that we did have a meeting still.
You can accept your report. So there's been a motion on the floor to accept the April 18th Parks and Recreation Committee meeting minutes. Is there a second?
Can't hear you.
Can everybody hear me now, or do I need to lean close to the microphone? Sorry about that. I'm sorry, where's the second? Representative McCabe. Motion's been moved and seconded to approve the April 18th meeting minutes of the RTM Parks and Recreation Committee. Is there any discussion before we vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously, 28-0 to 0.
The Recreation Committee had a meeting, Chairman John Wilson called the meeting to order at 6:42 on May 3rd at the Groton Senior Center. In attendance were Representative Wilson, Representative McDermott, Representative Irma Streeter, and Representative Dean Shinbrot. The committee did not have a quorum. Absent were Representatives Garcia, Laughlin, Wagner, Longino, McCabe. Also present were Mark Berry from Town Parks and Rec, Jerry Loken from Recreational Services, Eric Morrison, Mary Jo Riley, and Todd Goodhue. Representative Wilson thanked everyone for coming out again. As the committee did not have a quorum, he stated that deliberations were unfortunately not going to be able to be held. As such, the Town Council adopted amounts would be moved at the whole committee meeting, which will hold the deliberations. Representative Wilson asked members and guests if there was anything that they would like to discuss, and there were some items that were discussed. Account 1064 on page 182, Representative Wilson asked, that was pretty good, asked Mr. Berry if there's any pertinent information about this account. Mr. Berry explained that the program and services contribute to the community in many various ways. Cuts will affect senior transportation, sports field maintenance, and various programs. Specifically, the Parks and Recreation, or the Public Works, account was cut, and Public Works Department had outlined when the department had outlined his cuts, some of these expenses will inevitably shift to Parks and Recreation. Example was approximately $54,000 for fuel oil, field irrigation and maintenance, etc. With the cut stack up and account shifting, this budget will sustain an approximate 60% reduction. Representative McDermott asked about the trucks at the Senior Center. Mr. Berry explained that only one is Parks and Recreation, the others are Senior Center, and 2 were paid for by grants. Representative McDermott commented about putting the $54,000 back into the account. Mr. Berry explained that the fields that are used are also used for the schools for their programs. The maintenance not being done at Pequannock Plains would make the fields unusable. The reduction would also necessitate cutting back on building monitor hours, reduction of fleet funds, caused the need to look harder at how and when vehicles were replaced. Representative Dean Shinbrot commented about the importance of paving parking lots, not just for the safety aspects, but for aesthetics. Mr. Berry agreed. CIP4E, Park Improvement ADA Compliance on page 30. Representative Wilson asked Mr. Berry if there was any information pertaining to this CIP, and is the compliance study items a should or shall complete. Mr. Berry and Mr. Loken explained that the need for the parks to be more in compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. The ADA work needs to be done because we could be sued at any time in the future. We have done some things that were addressed in the compliance study, but there are many more things that need to be addressed. Item CIP4I, variable message display, page 35. Representative Wilson asked about the approximate size of the display, and has anyone raised the potential that it could be a cause for driver distraction for traffic on this busy road? And though it is proposed to be funded by a grant and fundraising, we must still approve the funding. Should the grant not materialize, the project get canceled for the fiscal year? Mr. Berry and Ms. Riley explained that the size of the sign is same as the Fitch High School sign. No one has mentioned it as a potential distraction, and the project would not go forward without the grants and fundraising. CIP4J, Copp property habitat rehabilitation, page 36. Representative Wilson asked about this project being funded by, proposed as grant funding that requires a match of in-kind services, though it was not successful the last time it was submitted. Should the grant not materialize, does the project get canceled for the fiscal year? Mr. Berry explained the project would not go forward if the fundraising grants did not materialize. CIP 4L, Copp property, Copp Family Park Trail improvements, page 39. Representative Wilson asked, should the grant not materialize, does the project get canceled for the fiscal year? And same answer, it would not go forward without the fundraising and the grants. CIP 4M, Calvin Burrows Field Lighting, page 40. I asked the same question about the fundraising, and Mr. Berry explained the same thing. Without the grants or fundraising, the project would not go forward. Account 2010, Shennecossett Golf Course Fund, page 199. Representative Wilson stated that the golf course is one of the shining jewels of our community. All the discussion. Account 3240, Recreation and Senior Account Activities, page 204. Representative McDermott asked about the expected revenue for rec programs and summer camps. Mr. Berry, Ms. Riley, and Mr. Loken explained that that the demand for the camps is high, but the increased cost of the camps is hurting participation. The special programs are self-sufficient and continue to impact the community in a positive way. Mr. Loken stated that people come to the area for the Parks and Recreation programs that we have here, and these are revenue-generating items. Mr. Berry stated that at the senior center, Mr. Berry stated that at the senior center, they have been more sensitive to rate increases. Representative McDermott asked if there were many volunteers. Mr. Bailey, Ms. Riley, and Mr. Loken explained that the staff wouldn't be increasing anytime in the future, and that reliance on the volunteers makes the programs work, and there are a lot of volunteers. There were no other referral items. Again, Mr. Representative Wilson thanked all that came, especially Department representatives. Having no other discussions to consider, Representative McDermott moved to adjourn. Representative Dean Schimbrot seconded. There was no discussion. Motion approved unanimously. Meeting adjourned at 7:46. Respectfully submitted. I move for acceptance of the May 3rd minutes.
Motion's been moved for acceptance of the May 3rd Parks and Recreation RTM Committee meeting. Is there a second? Adams. Motion's been moved and seconded to approve the May 3rd Parks and Rec Committee meeting minutes. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote on the May 3rd meeting minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously, 28-0. So for our first account, 1064 Parks and Recreation.
Page 182. Mr. Moderator, I'd move $1,586,586. 1586586. This is the town council's number.
Powers.
Second.
1586.
All set. Motion's been moved and seconded for $1,586,586 for account 1064. Parks and Recreation. Is there any discussion on this motion? Representative Marley.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I haven't really thought about this account very much, but in light of today's news from the state capitol, I want to encourage people to look at each line item very carefully.
I'm sorry, Representative Marley. What news from the state capitol?
I'm sorry, what?
What was the news from the state capitol?
I talked to Chris Connolly today, and she said that the ECS cuts went from $14 million to $17.2 million in a cut. So I haven't really thought of a number to cut from this, but I feel that we should at least cut from this line item. I haven't thought about it enough to propose a number.
Representative McDermott, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Yeah, it's 17 million plus, but that number changes constantly, so we don't really know where we're going to be with this thing. Maybe Thursday we'll know a little better. Mark, some of the expenses that we discussed when we were in the meeting with you, with regard to things that were in Public Works and were moved over to you. You said it was approximately $54,000, so that's like an addition to your, or that doesn't, the number that's here does not include any of that stuff, is that correct?
Right, when we put out.
The things that were in Public Works that were moved over to you, like irrigating Pequannock Plains Park and stuff like that, is that represented or not represented in the number that was just moved?
No, that was not included in this.
So that's an
Direct-
extra that
actually, excuse me
that
one
we
second.
have to pay for in parks.
Right, those numbers came up during the course of the budget meeting with the council, was the first time that I became aware of the,
And they were,
Transfer.
what exactly were they?
Hey, just one second. Director Barry, could you please introduce yourself?
oh,
Eh,
I'm sorry.
For the record.
Mark Berry, Director of Parks and Recreation. So the list that was provided to me was Calvin Burrows Little League Field and concession stand, electricity and water. Esker Point Beach Bathhouse, electricity, water, cleaning, and waste removal. Farquhar Park Basketball Court, electricity. Pequannock Plains Park Field and concession stand, electricity, water, cleaning, and waste removal. Sutton Park Little League, pavilions and concession, electric, water, and cleaning. And that totaled $42,530.
I'd like to make a motion to move another number, which would include the 42, what was it?
The 42,530. Now, there was
40
also.
Plus, that number on the board, Mr. Moderator, plus 42,530, please?
Bruce, there was also, the proposal was to no longer pay, right now, Public Works pays for the first 6,000 gallons of fuel oil for William City School, which is where we do most of our programs, or not most, but we do quite a few of our programs. That was an additional 12,000, so the 42 plus the 12 came to 54.
Oh, okay.
Representative McDermott.
Uh,
Representative
That would be
McDermott.
1641.
Representative McDermott. I'm sorry, but that's also the manager's number, in addition to town council's number. We can't exceed.
So we need
we can't exceed-
two-thirds, that's all, right?
We can't exceed the manager's number.
Oh, it's above that?
Yeah.
No, that's not the manager's number.
Yeah, I think it
Oh,
is.
yeah,
No, that was the,
Yes, it is. I'm
the
sorry. I was reading the wrong column.
1,649,000 was what was requested.
That's okay.
Okay,
You didn't know about it either.
I see, yeah. Well, between a rock and a hard place, huh? All right, thank you.
Sorry. Representative Dean Shinbrot.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'd just like to point out that this number that's proposed is 5% less, or 6% less than last year's budget. And with the, that's my notes. Am I wrong on that?
No, I think that this number here, the number that was approved by the council is 2.7% less.
Less than, okay.
The 6% is when you factor in the transfer of expenses from Public Works to the Parks and Recreation. That additional 54,000 bumps
Okay,
it up to
so then it's
6%.
6%, okay.
Yes.
Representative Kent.
I'd like to propose another number, 1,450,000.
Can you please state your rationale?
My
Representative?
rationale is there's a transportation fund for a cost of roughly $160,000, providing about 5,000 rides. It's about $31 a ride. I think they should explore, you can get an Uber ride around town for $15. I mean, that's way out of line. Secondly, down the senior center fees, actual 216 was 56,000. We should add that back in. There's no reason why we're going with 2,500 in fees when the actual was 56 last year.
Is there a second?
Mr. Moderator, I'd second that motion, just so we can have discussion.
No, you can't do
Motion has been moved and seconded for $1,450,000. Is there any discussion on this motion? Representative Nugent.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Yeah, I support the first number, the 1586586, and I just want to point out is that the town manager has already reduced the Director Barry's request by $63,306. And also to point out is that if you look on page 183 and 184, I highlighted a couple of things. The Parks and Recs, they continue every year to look for new efficiencies, new ways to raise money, how to get grants. A few of them, revenue, few things here. New registration program that will reduce staff time. A volunteer recruitment program to allow the senior center to continue providing programs and services without impacting budget. A mobile vendor permit process. Cultivating our relationship with local business to increase sponsorship dollars to help offset program fees. Coming year, we're planning 2 new events, a mud run and a Halloween-themed race. And there's other things, different grants they're applying for. And, as to, what's the old saying, no good deed shall go unpunished. I think we should stop punishing Parks and Recs for being so efficient and looking for ways to increase revenues. Thank you.
Any additional discussion on the first amended figure? Yes. Representative O'Bray.
I was just wondering if I might ask a question, Mr. Moderator.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm wondering how one department can change another department's budget. Apparently, it was without discussion, and notification came through a public meeting. Mark, could you explain that, maybe?
Well, Mr. Moderator, if I may, I think the confusion in Representative O'Bray, thank you, Mr. Moderator, is the fact that they didn't transfer the expenses. What Public Works did was they cut those expenses of their own, which means they need to be done elsewhere. So they didn't actually get transferred from one department to another. It's just that one department cut it from their budget, which means another department is going to have to pick it up if the fields are going to be usable and so forth. So it wasn't really a direct transfer.
I'm sorry, that's not an explanation. They still transferred it. How do they transfer it without having discussion between the 2 departments and working out something that might be accommodating to both?
You're not going to like my answer either.
Okay.
It's going to sound real familiar.
It's yet to be determined. The numbers that have been thrown out in terms of potential reductions in costs in the Public Works budget were identified by the Director of Public Works. I have not signed off on them at this point. So it remains, once the dust is settled on all the reductions, we're going to have to figure out how we're going to divvy up some of these. There are going to be some things we're just not going to do.
Right.
Certainly nobody wants to see fields go bad. We don't have enough fields as right now, let alone, turning our back on Pequannock Plains or Calvin Burrows or whatever it is. But these were proposals that the Public Works Director made. They have not been authorized or approved at this point.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to know. If I might?
Yes, ma'am.
I'd just like to say that twice a year, I work very closely with Parks and Rec on 2 events that we have. The Groton Business Association does, the Fall Festival and the Holiday Parade. And they are just phenomenal. They do such a great job working with us, and we couldn't do either without them. And I know there's a lot of other things that go on, this being one big example of a good job being done in the senior center. So I just hope we can at least go with the first amount. It's kind of like at this point, if Hartford's saying it's going to be 17, it's going to be 16, But we're not going to make enough of a difference in the budget to make any real difference, I don't think. So we might as well just go forward and hope that they come out with a better number in Hartford. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on the first amended figure? Representative Casper.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I somehow don't see, I'm thinking in particular when my mother was in relying on that transportation as a senior, I just don't see her calling Uber. And I don't see Uber coming and transporting her with her oxygen tank and her walker. And generally, she would go with a friend or two. And I don't think I really don't think Uber is an alternative for that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Representative Merritt.
I'm going to go along with Representative Casper. I really don't want to get involved in contracting out a lot of stuff that we depend upon in-house, because in-house is a little more dependable. And contracting out, if the company that we contract out with fails, then we have to go looking elsewhere, and in the meantime, people are waiting for the service.
Any further discussion on the first amended figure of $1,450,000 for account 1064 Parks and Rec? Seeing none, we will vote on the first amended figure. Okay. All those in favor of $1,450,000 for account 1064, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
State the ayes.
Actually, will the yeas please raise their hand?
Ayes or yeas?
Yay. Yes. Yeses. 3. Representative Laughlin, are you a yay or nay on this vote? Nay.
What?
Yes or no?
You were no vote, right? Representative Laughlin? Okay.
Yeah,
Any abstentions?
just a no vote.
Yeah.
No, 3, 25.
Motion fails 25-3.
Yes, 3. No, 25. Abstention, 0.
All right. Motion fails 23-5-0. I mean, 3-25. 3-25-0. Is there any discussion on the main motion? Representative McDermott.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Mark, how many people use our services for the senior center or are part of the programs, just out of curiosity? Do you have a number?
300, sorry. We have about 350 seniors that come through the senior center on a daily basis. Recreational programming, I don't have that number off the top of my head, and then we
It's got to
don't.
be a lot larger, though, wouldn't it?
Oh, it is, yeah. And then we don't,
Would you hazard a guess?
if you gave me a minute, I could probably look to see.
9,000, 10,000?
Yeah, I was going to say 9 or 10,000, and that doesn't include all the people that utilize our parks. I mean, if you look at Pequannock Plains Park on a nice day, you know, that playground is packed, and then in the afternoon into the early evening, the parking lot is, both parking lots are full, and people are parking on the grass, so it's difficult to say. And that's just one park. You know, you got Sutton Park across the street, and then all the other, you know, Calvin Burrows and all the neighborhood parks. I mean, it would be difficult to quantify the number of people that utilize their parks, and then we haven't even talked about trails. You know, we've got a number of trails that people utilize on a daily basis also.
Thank you.
Representative Kent.
Yeah, Why are there no senior fees? In 2016 was 56,170, and it's proposed now 2,500. Why are we getting rid of senior fees?
Last year, well, let me back up a little bit. We had previously a portion of the full-time salaries was being charged to the Special Revenue Fund, which is a fund we're going to be getting to, 3240. So the program fees that were associated with that person were applied to this program. But since that all got pulled out, all the money has gone into that other account. That's why the difference from 56 to 2,500.
Representative Kent, did you have any follow-up question?
I didn't follow that.
Okay.
So are seniors paying fees?
Oh, absolutely.
Then shouldn't they be shown here?
Well, the money that they pay goes into the 3240 account, which is the Special Revenue Fund. And those fees cover the costs for instructors, materials, and supplies.
Right, so account 3240,
Yes, you will.
2 accounts from now. Is there any other discussion on the amount of $1,586,586 for account 1064? Representative Marley.
I'd like to add a new, propose a new number, 1,507,257, which, too fast? 507,257. That's a 5% cut.
Is there a second?
Second.
No.
Motion's been moved and seconded for $1,507,257 for account 1064. Representative Marley, would you like to give your rationale for that number, please? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
It's just a 5% cut.
Okay. Is there any discussion on the First Amendment figure? Representative Massett.
Mr. Moderator, this is for Mr. Barry. On page 182, you talk about the impact of a 5% decrease. That would mean a reduction in Parks and Rec staff, loss possibly of the 4th of July parade, and just general mayhem.
Well, I have outlined on page 182 some of the proposed cuts. And as you identified, that would include reducing seasonal park staff, cutting 8 hours of transportation for seniors, eliminating weekend overtime hours. So right now, we have staff that come in on the weekends, take care of the trash down at Pequannock Plains, Esker Point Beach, Sutton Park, where we rent out gazebos. So we would no longer be able to guarantee that a shelter that someone rented and paid for would be clean. Reduce materials and supplies. We reduce staff training. We would discontinue the 4th of July parade and reduce building monitor hours. Oh, and the other thing is we would also eliminate overtime hours for the Fall Festival. So those cumulative cuts would represent a 5% decrease in our budget. Now, the impact, we would consider no longer maintaining some neighborhood parks and open space. Last summer, we spent, we were chasing our tails all summer trying to keep up with maintaining the park simply because we were short-staffed. If that's the case again this year, I would rather have 100%, I'm sorry, I'd rather have 70% of my parks at 100% than 100% of my parks at 70%. So those are the kinds of, that's the kind of impact that a 5% budget decrease would be.
Director Barry, what is building, we're using building monitor hours, what's that?
The building monitors are the folks that sit out front here in the evening for programs.
Just here at the senior center?
Here at the senior center, yes. Yeah.
Any further discussion on the amount of $1,507,257? Representative Frickman.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I just had a quick question. In the past, I recall that we used to charge people to park at Escort Point Beach for the parking lot.
Yeah.
And why did we stop doing that? Wasn't that a cash cow of revenue for people parking during the beach?
Yeah, you know, that happened before I got here. I know we do charge for parking for the concerts on Thursday night. I'm sure it just had to do with budget cuts and not being able to fund having a staff person down there. I don't know whether it was a revenue generator or not. If it was, I'm not sure why it was cut from the budget, but yeah, sorry.
Representative Sleeker Hassan.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Mr. Berry, correct me if I'm wrong, but was there discussion of a possible donor stepping forward to sponsor the 4th of July parade?
No, there's been no discussion that I'm aware of a sponsor for the 4th of July parade. We do have a sponsor this year, again, for the fireworks. That was cut from the budget already, and Groton Utilities has stepped forward with a $10,000 contribution to cover the costs associated with the fireworks. The town of Groton, the Parks and Recreation end of it. It certainly doesn't cover everything, but to pay for the rental of the fort, for portalets, for overtime and all of those things, the Groton Utilities has agreed to cover that again this year, although I'm not sure how long they're going to continue to do this.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Representative Merritt.
I see your budget was cut $63,000 from the request, and I feel a little uncomfortable in cutting another $81,000 as to where that's going to place this department.
Additional discussion on the First Amendment figure. Seeing none, we'll vote on the First Amendment figure of $1,507,257 for account 1064 Parks and Rec. All those in favor say aye. Got them?
No, Kent.
Okay, no.
Kent.
Guys are supposed to say aye. Got them?
Mm-hmm.
Opposed?
Abstentions.
24 4.
Oh, I didn't know abstentions.
Are there any abstentions?
Okay. 4 in favor, 24 opposed. 0 abstentions.
Motion fails. 24.
Nope.
Jeez. I get my head in the game. Motion fails 4 to 24 to 0. I'm worth every dime you pay me.
And we get what we pay for.
That is the corollary. All right. So we have a motion on the floor for $1,586,586. Is there any discussion on this motion? Representative Nault.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'd like to move a new number. It's $1,554,854. 854. Rationale is that's a 2% cut off the town manager's number, and I disagree with the argument that because the 17 million is such a big number, we shouldn't cut anything else. I think we have a duty to cut everywhere, and everybody knows my opinion.
Is there any further discussion on
Need a
first
second.
amended figure of
Need a se- I need a
1,500,000?
second.
I'm sorry, who?
I need a second.
Second. Motion's been moved and seconded for $1,554,854 for account 1064. Is there any discussion? Representative Casper.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. As a senior, this is such a small part of the budget compared to the schools that us elder citizens who will be impacted by this cut, probably out of proportion to the rest of the town. And for that reason, I cannot support that number.
Additional discussion on the first amended figure. Seeing none, we will vote on the first amended figure of $1,554,854 for account 1064, Parks and Recreation. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Can I do a roll call?
Yeah, I have to because.
Let's do a roll call vote.
There's too many people in the room.
Too many people.
Adams? Yes. Bailey? Yes or nay? Oh, I'm sorry, yes. If I call your name, say yes, no, or abstention, so I don't need you, to go through everything. So, Karen said yes. Bailey?
No.
Baker? Oops, she's not here. Burrell?
No.
Bauer?
No.
Casper?
No.
Dean Shinbrot?
No.
Evans?
No.
Frickman?
Yes.
Gilly? Kent?
Yes.
Laughlin? Laughlin?
Yes.
Marley?
Yes.
Massett?
No.
McCabe?
Yes.
McDermott?
No.
Merritt?
No.
Nault?
Yes.
Nugent?
No.
Aubry?
No.
Parker? Pasqualini? Powers?
No.
Quinn?
Yes.
Sleeker Hersant?
Yes.
Watrous?
No.
Wells?
No.
Wilson?
Yes.
Newsom?
Yes.
That's it. There aren't any abstentions. So it's 11 in favor, 17 opposed, no abstentions. 11 in favor.
Motion fails 11 to 17 to 0.
It was 1 million.
We're back to the main motion, $1,586,586. Is there any discussion before we vote?
8, 5.
Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, so it's Newsom, Sleeker, Hersant, Quinn, McCabe, Nault. Kent. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep. No, Marley. Marley.
Representative Marley, we were in the middle of voting on the first amendment, the main motion on the floor. No.
7 opposed, 0 abstentions.
The motion passes 21 to 7 to 0. Next account is account 2010, Shennecossett Golf Course Fund, on page 189 of your budget book.
Mr. Moderator.
Representative Wilson.
Just a point for clarification, we're not going to do the CIPs, we're going to do the other two accounts and then the CIPs for this account, or for this group?
What do you mean? We have the CIPs coming up as well.
Are we doing the CIPs after the two accounts is my question? Or are we doing the
Yes.
CIPs now?
If there's no objection,
They're scheduled.
that's how it's scheduled.
They're scheduled.
2010 is next.
According to the schedule, I thought we were doing CIP 4. I don't have a schedule up here with me, I'm sorry.
We're okay.
Sorry.
What would you like to do, Mr. Moderator? I will do
2010,
whatever.
I'd like to do account 2010 Shennecossett Golf Course Fund, if that's all right. If there's unless there's objection.
Account 2010, page 199.
189.
We're at 199, 10 off. Mr. Moderator, I'd like to move $1,179,862.
Second.
Mr. Moderator, this is the town council's number.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Oh, actually, is there a second? Adams. Motion's been moved and seconded for $1,179,862 for account 2010 Shennecossett Golf Course Fund. Is there any discussion? Representative Marley.
I'm sorry, I haven't really looked at this line item. Can somebody explain to me whether or not this is a town-operated golf course, or if this is a 501(c)(3)? Is this a for-profit company?
Mr. Manager or Director Barry, would you like to answer that?
Sure, I'll take a stab at this. So this is a special revenue account. All the greens fees and membership pay for all the expenses associated with the operation of the golf course. In addition to, last year the golf course paid back to the town $59,000 for services associated with human resources and finance and things like that. So this has absolutely no impact on the general fund at all.
Is there any additional discussion, Representative Kent?
I'd like to propose a number of $1,092,463. And that represents a reduction of $87,399 from the number above it. My rationale for this is that the golf course, if it were privately owned, would and is assessed by the town at $5,336,000, and for tax purposes at $3735, almost $4 million. If it were privately owned, if it were sold to someone for $1 and they were taxed for that, they would be taxed at $87,399 at some of the earlier mill rates. It's probably going up. So to think that the foregone revenue is not a factor on the town's budget is a fallacious assumption.
Is there a second?
For purposes of discussion, I'll second.
Mr. Manager or Director Barry, would you like to comment on that?
Well, the town has owned the golf course since, I believe, 1967, 68 timeframe. Wasn't here then, so I don't know what the community was talking about and why we acquired it, but I have to say I think it's probably one of the best investments this community has ever made. We did get a state grant at the time to help pay for the cost, a portion of the cost of buying the property. I think to sell it at this point would be pretty complicated to do that with respect to trying to work something out with the state. It is considered open space. And I would dare say that if it was sold, it probably would not ultimately be used as a golf course. It would probably be used to support some other residential or some other type of development. I think it's one of the gems. I think personally it's one of the assets that the town has that makes us very different from other communities. Quite a large amount of goodwill we get through the operation of the golf course. People know of Groton because of the golf course. And as Mark Berry noted, we have gotten it to the point where operationally it essentially pays for itself. There is some money that comes back to the town in terms of a payment, as Mark noted, that $57,000. Not sure why we would want to sell the course, even if we could, and I don't believe we could at this point in time.
I'm not saying we should sell the course, but I think the question is, how many cops and teachers do we want to lay off to subsidize the green fees? And that's clearly, we're not making enough money on this. This is a $5.5 million value asset. It's for recreation, fee-paid recreation. We ought to at least get what we would get if a private owner had it and we're paying property taxes. And then on top of this, you want capital expenditures on top of that. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a lot of foregone revenue plus expenses to net. I think you're talking 36K contribution. That's not profit. That's contribution. It's a lot of money for the town to be subsidizing a golf course.
Well,
the golf course should be above and beyond a straight moneymaker, or get out of the golf business.
Yes, Mr. Manager.
Of all the Parks and Rec programming activities, this is the one that pays for itself the most. I wished all of our other programming activities, be it at the senior center, Parks Playground, and other things that we do, were as successful as the golf course.
Just raise the fees and everything 10%. I think we would be in good shape.
And there's a direct correlation between raising the fees and losing play. And that is something that the golf advisory staff, the golf advisory board, and the council considers every year when the fees are established on an annual basis. It's a delicate balancing point as to how much you can charge before you start losing people.
Representative Massett.
Mr. Berry, I've been around a year or two, and I've discussed the golf course budget for a year or two, and now I'm totally confused. I have always gone on the assumption that, bottom line, the golf course, along with a lot of other Parks and Rec programs, are now set up to be self-sustaining. So it's not costing taxpayers any money. Am I correct?
For the operational portion of the golf course, that is correct.
Thank you.
So, Director Barry, essentially, your financing plan here, season memberships, greens fees, cart rentals, and lease fees, covers the operating costs of the golf course, right?
With the exception of the capital projects. That is correct.
But what is not, what about salaries?
Oh, yeah, salaries.
Salaries are all covered here, right?
Salaries, yes. Post-employee benefits, insurance, all of those things are covered.
Benefits and insurance are covered here in this account?
Yes, yes, that is correct.
Isn't that?
Representative O'Bray.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Probably seems like I have to throw something in with everything, but I think if you were to look at how much the properties in that area would be devalued if you were to take the golf course out. Now, some of the value down there that it's taxed on is certainly because it's close to the water. But some of the properties are taxed a little differently because they're on the golf course or near the golf course. And I think if we were to do a comparison, you would see that the elevation in the values and the taxes would probably pretty much make the difference. It is a real asset. As I take people out and show them Groton, I certainly always show them the golf course as I'm taking them down to the beach and taking them by the beautiful homes and the nice subdivisions and so forth that all surround that golf course. It's a big selling point for Groton. And I'm afraid that Mark would be correct. If that was to be sold, it would not be as a golf course. Thank you.
If it were sold, the 61 acres could be turned into a very, very expensive development and bring in a lot of tax revenue in this town. I'm not recommending it be sold. I recommend that the fees cover the expenses, and they're not. They're not covering capital improvements, and they don't cover the foregone revenue for the property taxes.
Any additional discussion? Representative Pasqualini.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Mark, I don't see in the operating expenses for water a breakout of what gets paid to Groton Utilities for water. Do we know what that amount is?
Off the top of my head, I think it was $36,000 last year we paid to the city of Groton for water.
Any additional discussion on the First Amendment figure, $1,092,463? Representative Casper.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Right now, this budget is a self-sustaining one, and it does return some money to the town. We can argue some other time the rationale of whether it should be sold or not, but right now, cutting the budget does nothing except hamper the ability of the golf course to return a profit to the town. I can't support cutting that number.
Any additional discussion on the First Amendment figure? Seeing none, we will vote on the First Amendment figure of $1,092,463 for account 2010 Shennecossett Golf Course. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Can the ayes put their hands up, please? Can the ayes put their hands up, please? Are there any abstentions? Motion fails 6 to 22 to 0. We'll now entertain discussion on the main motion of $1,179,862. Mr. Manager, how long has it taken to get the golf course to this point of self-sufficiency? It's taken quite a while to get to this point, hasn't it?
Well, I think it's been probably close to 10 years that we've done okay. There will be instances where we may not be self-sufficient because of weather and so forth and so on. And we did have an incident 6, 7, 8 years ago where that happened, and then they had to make up for it the next year. I can't speak for how the golf course, how it did 20, 25 years ago. I know with Mark's help and John Silsby's help and Eric and Todd's help that, they've made a lot of changes over the last 10 plus years to get it to the point that it's operationally been self-sufficient, starting to build up a little bit of reserve so that if there is a bad weather season or a streak of bad weather, there's something to fall back on.
Director Barry, do you want to say something?
Well, I was just going to add that we currently have a fund balance of about $99,000. And with the wet spring that we have had, it looks like we may need to dip into that in order to balance expenses and revenue this year. Fingers crossed, though, we'll pick that up, but this has been a tough spring for us.
Is there any additional discussion on the figure on the floor? Seeing none, we will vote on $1,179,862 for account 2010 Shennecossett Golf Course. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes 23-5-0.
Account 3240, page 194.
Parks and, no, I'm sorry, Recreation and Senior Activities.
Mr. Moderator, I move $1,122,356.
Second.
Mr. Moderator, this is the town council's number.
You got a second? Motion's been moved and seconded for $1,122,356 for account 3240, Senior Activities. Recreation and Senior Activities. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote. All those in favor of $1,122,356 for account 3240, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Bless you. Motion carries 26-1 to 1. So we're going to move into some of the Parks and Rec CIP accounts. The first one is CIP 4E, Park Improvement, ADA Compliance, on page B30 of your budget book.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town council's number of 0.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded for CIP Project 4E, Park Improvement and ADA Compliance, in the amount of 0. Is there any discussion? Representative Nugent.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Moderator. I have a question for Mr. Berry. Of the two, the $45 funds, there's the one, repair the playing surface, the roller hockey rink for $20,000. And then the second, replace the Tanglewood Park basketball court, couple of things, 25. And that project seems to include an ADA compliant path. I do think we should be, moving ahead on the ADA compliance, because I understand from previous discussion, there may be, we could be assessed fines. Could you estimate, if I was to propose another number, what number might cover the ADA compliance of this request, approximate? 25, or is it, we'd have to do the 25,000 to, you can't break it up then. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, you're asking for just the building the ADA compliant path?
Right,
to,
right. Or do you have to do the whole thing?
Well, the work does need to be done on the basketball court.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would make sense to go in and do it all at once versus paving an ADA compliant path and then driving over it the next year to tear up the basketball court to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel comfortable throwing out a number for just the
right. Mm-hmm.
just the path itself.
Okay, and then the first one, the playing surface is cracked. Okay, so that's a safety concern, you feel?
It is, yeah. And I don't have a picture of it in here, but there's probably 20 or so different spots around the court, right at the edge of the floor and the border, where the surface has all come off and it's cracked. And it is a safety concern and does need to be addressed.
Okay, I'd like to move another number, 45,000. And
Is there a second?
And my rationale is both with the number one safety hazard, number two, the ADA compliance. And I guess I'm a little perplexed by the town council priorities because they approved $50,000 for a message display sign. I'd rather put it on the park improvement ADA compliance. Thank you.
Representative Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Mr. Berry, perhaps with the basketball court, it could be a general fix of possibly using a fine-grade mortar to seal in the cracks and make it level. As far as the skating rink, it seems that it's probably receded because of temperature changes being outside all the time. And maybe something along that way with some kind of urethane or poly, that could be rectified also. Is that possible?
I'm not a flooring expert. I'm going on what we had somebody come in and look at it and make an assessment of the work that needed to be done. That could be a possibility. I'm not sure.
Okay, if that could be investigated, perhaps.
Sure.
It may not take care of the whole deal, but it'll keep it going along.
Right. Yep.
All right. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Is there any additional discussion on the amount of $45,000? Representative Nault.
I can't speak for the town council, but I would just point out that the variable message display in CIP 4I does not require any money out of the capital reserve fund. It's going to come from a combination of fundraising and a nuclear safety grant, just so people know why that is.
Representative McDermott.
Mark, if we push these ADA things off to some future date uncertain, are there any penalties or anything like that involved that you're aware of? I mean, what's the repercussion for not doing this stuff this year?
Well, I think I mentioned at the RTM subcommittee, the town of Groton is probably ahead of a lot of other communities in that we actually have put a plan together and we've started to address it. Now, some communities, I'm sure, have no plan at all. But they do need to see that you've made, just having a plan in place, but not following through with that plan doesn't negate the possibility that, you know, somebody could come after you to say, look, you're not compliant. I mean, we have a stronger argument, I think, than some other communities. But if we continually don't fund these projects, then they can say, well, yeah, that's great, you got a plan, but you have no intentions of following through with the plan.
How many times does this come up? Is this like the first or second time?
I think this is the second year that it's been proposed to, well, I can't remember if this is the second or third year. I think it's actually only the second year that it was proposed.
Okay, thanks.
Is there any additional discussion on the figure of $45,000? And Director Barry, when you say we're ahead of other towns, we do more than just plan, right? We have, how many playgrounds do we have that are ADA compliant?
Yes, we have taken some steps already to, we've kind of picked the low-hanging fruit as far as ADA compliance with new signs, parking lot striping, and things like that. So, and we have put out ADA compliant picnic tables and things like that. So we have done some. We haven't made a huge capital investment yet.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Is there any other discussion on the amount of $45,000 for CIP 4E? Representative Noland.
Does this require a 2/3 vote, is that correct?
Yes. Just before we vote, I was about to let everybody know, since $45,000 was the manager's number, 0 was the town council's, it's going to require a 2/3 vote to pass, which is 19 representatives, 2/3 of those present. Is there any other discussion before we vote on the figure of $45,000? Seeing none, we'll vote for $45,000 for CIP account 4E. All those in favor say aye.
Raise your hands,
Ayes, please raise your hands. Opposed?
Oh, I didn't see Casper.
Any abstentions?
One abstention.
Representative Parker abstains.
Fails. 720 to 1. 721.
Motion fails 7 to 20 to 1. Is there any discussion on the council figure of 0? Seeing none, we'll vote. All those in favor of 0 for CIP 4E, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Raise your hands up, please. Representative Bauer, raise your hand up. Any abstentions?
One abstention.
Motion passes 21-6-0. One, I'm sorry. Representative Parker. Next CIP we have is CIP 4I, variable message display on page B35 in your budget book.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to move a figure of $50,000.
Second.
Mr. Moderator, this is the town council's number.
Motion of $50,000 moved and seconded for CIP 4I. Is there any discussion on this CIP? And Representative Alt, what did you say about the funding?
Well, if you look at the page there on 4I, you can see there's $50,000 funds, 14 of which is a nuclear safety grant that's going to be applied for, 2,200 from Club 55, and the remaining will be raised by donations.
Is there any other discussion? Representative Kent.
Is this contingent on getting the donations?
Yes, we would not move forward with this project without the money.
Any other discussion on the CIP? Seeing none, we will vote. The amount of $50,000 for CIP 4I. Variable message display. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 26-1-1. Next count, CIP 4J. Copp property habitat restoration on page B36 in your budget book.
Mr. Moderator, I move $25,000. This is the town council's number.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded for $25,000 for CIP account 4J. Is there any discussion before we vote? Director Barry, can you explain this one a little bit, please?
Sure. So conservation is one of the pillars of Parks and Recreation, and this project proposes to enhance a meadow that currently exists within the Copp property by planting additional milkweed to supplement what currently exists. Milkweed is crucial to butterfly's life cycle. And there's also an educational component. We're working with the schools to develop the site as a field trip location. There's been, across the country, there's been a huge decline in butterflies, and there's been an effort across the country through Parks and Recreation departments and the NRPA to try to bring back some of the habitat for the monarch butterfly. And so this project would be funded entirely through a grant.
Right. So this is funded by the Community Foundation grant.
That's correct.
So there's no money out of the general fund.
That's correct.
Is there any other discussion? Where? Director Barry, where it says the grant required a match of in-kind services for the project, what does that mean? What was the match?
That would mean perhaps getting one of the local high schools, I think there's a agricultural program in Ledyard, thank you. Okay, in Ledyard, that might be interested in providing the labor to plant the milkweeds. So that would be an in-kind contribution because there's a certain value associated with the labor of those students putting that in. So that would be an
if we don't
in-kind.
get sufficient volunteers, then what happens?
Well, yeah, we could try to get volunteers also, and there's an hourly figure for volunteers, so we could use that to apply as in-kind.
Are there any additional questions? Seeing none, we'll vote on $25,000 for CIP 4J, Copp Park Habitat Restoration. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Representative Merritt abstains. Motion passes 27 to 0 to 1. Next count, CIP 4L, Copp Family Park Trail Improvements.
Mr. Moderator, I would like to move $100,000. Second. Mr. Moderator, this is the town council's number.
It's located on page B39 in your budget book. Did you get a second? Motion's been moved and seconded for $100,000 for CIP 4L, Copp Family Park Trail Improvements. Is there any discussion? This is also paid for from the Recreational Trails Grant?
Right, that's correct. 80% of this would be paid through the Recreational Trails Grant. It does require a 20% match, which the council and RTM approved, I think, in FYE 15 or 15? In FYE 15.
Is there any additional discussion on this account? Seeing none, we'll vote on the amount of $100,000 for CIP 4L, Copp Family Park Trail Improvements. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
2 abstentions.
Motion carries 26-0-2. And the last CIP, the CIP 4M, Calvin Burrows Field Lighting on page B40 in your budget book.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to move a figure of $83,000.
Second.
Mr. Moderator, this is also the town council's figure.
Motion's been moved and seconded for the amount of $83,000 for CIP 4M, Calvin Burrows Field Lighting. It's on page B40. Is there discussion on this account? Representative Laughlin. Oh, yes, sir. It's already been seconded. You don't have a question. Okay. And so, according to this, that money would be paid for how? Fundraising?
Yes, Groton Little League has already received a grant from Groton Utilities for $20,000. They recently held a fundraiser and they raised $10,000. They currently have $40,000 through various fundraising activities, and they also are looking to finance whatever they can't raise. So again, this is a project that would have no impact on the town.
So until they're able to get that $83,000, the program doesn't start, or?
Well, I think at some point they're going to make a decision that they need to move forward, secure a loan, and get the lights in. The latest that I've heard is that it would be ready, the lights would be going in sometime this fall.
Is there any other discussion on this account? Seeing none, we will vote in the amount of $83,000 for CIP 4M, Calvin Burrows Field Lighting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously, 28-0-0. What I'd like to do right now is take a quick 10-minute break before we get to planning. So we're in recess for 10 minutes. Next account on the floor is account 1046, Planning and Development Services.
The committee would like to put a number on the floor of $1,246,174.
Second. Motion's been moved and seconded for $1,246,174 for account 1046, Planning and Development Services, which is on page 151 of your big budget book. Chairman Obrey, would you like to give the rationale for your committee's number?
I would. The committee felt very comfortable to go forward with this because of the fact that the planning and development comes and talks to us periodically during the year. So we felt that we were familiar with many of their objectives and many of their plans, and that we thought they were a real asset to the town. They have a very different view of things right now, and everything's moving very, very well. And they've got a lot of programs, and they're trying to streamline the zoning, Julis study, Blue Ribbon study, as well as an overall positive direction in the town. There was discussion on properties being marketed by reps, and we now have an actual program for sale of schools, which we did not have in the past. Some zoning change along with future plans for Route 12 and Sealy School sale. So we were very comfortable with the number, and it was a unanimous vote.
So the number is $1,000 less than the manager or the council number? Is there?
Oh, if it is, that's a mistake. That's 1,000 less? Wait a minute, I didn't bring my book up. I'm sorry, we went with the number. I must have made a mistake on the, with somebody, let's
So
see.
your committee number's incorrect then?
Correct. Yes. It was the number that was brought forward. We didn't make any changes to it. Sorry, John.
Motion's been moved and seconded for $1,247,174 for account 1046, Planning and Development Services. Mr. Director, would you like to introduce yourself, just for the record?
Jonathan Reiner, Director of Planning and Development Services.
Is there anything that you want to add to what the chairman has said for the committee report?
I'll be very brief. We have tried to update the RTM quite often this past year and the year before on many of the initiatives that we're working on. We do feel that we're making good progress on items that were budgeted last year. We've been getting a lot of positive feedback from the development community, a lot of interest in new development. We think that it's very important that we keep moving in the direction that we're moving now with the future very large investments that we see coming down the line with electric boat. Now is the time where we have to keep the efforts moving that we've been doing. If we slow those down now, we're going to miss a very big opportunity. A lot of developers are interested in the region right now. Electric boat's going to be hiring anywhere from 8 to 10,000 people just here in Groton over the next 5 to 10 years. We need to get the housing in stock. We need to get the new offices, the new retail in place. We need the staff and the resources to do that. I think I've said to you before, if nothing changes, then nothing changes. So we have an opportunity to change things, and this is a great opportunity for us. So this year's budget is a 12% decrease from last year's budget. So last year we'd said to you we had a lot of special projects to work on. This year there's still some things we're working on, some special projects, but much less than last year's initiatives. A lot of those we're still moving forward on. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the director? Representative Nugent.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Yes, Mr. Reiner. How's it going with the zoning regulation update rewrite?
Slow but steady. We had our first public hearing on the Water Resource Protection District section of the regulations. We have a continuance of that to next Wednesday night before, the following Wednesday, the 31st of May. A number of folks from the environmental community have been coming out, speaking on one side of it, the business community on the other. The zoning commission is the group that gets to make the ultimate decision. Staff and our experts on this advise the zoning commission, just as you're advised or the town council's advised on matters, but it's the zoning commission that makes the ultimate decision. We've also been making progress on other sections of the regulations, but we've been holding off on presenting those until we move past this first section. This is the most complicated from a scientific environmental perspective, so that's why it's taking some time with this particular section. It's taken a lot longer than we thought, but we're hoping we'll be past it soon.
Now, are you presenting the changes to the, would the zoning commission be voting on the changes in sections? Or does it have to be approved at the end?
No, so this particular one they're voting on in sections. After this, we'll come back with larger sections of the regulations. We could do the whole thing as one document, but I think it works out better if we come back and work on specific sections, not piecemeal, but looking and working with them on the whole document of an outline, kind of a table of contents, how we're going to reorganize it, and then break it down section by section.
And so they'll go into effect as they're...
Correct.
As they're passed?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Representative McDermott.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. John, I'm really happy to see what's happened last year. This is really the first time in a long time I can remember seeing or feeling a positive attitude in the community about going forward. And I was particularly pleased with the economic development zone around the airport. Has there been any kind of positive action on getting anybody in that airport that'll fly us out? Or is that just not going to happen?
Nothing that I'm aware of at this time.
Thanks.
Representative Kent.
Yeah, I noticed that you're eliminating the town excess property management. How is that being addressed? Because that would seem something that would really provide some payback.
We do have some money left over from last year's capital improvement project in that account, so we do have some excess money. That was something that in this year's budget we had removed from the CIP, put in operating expenses, and working with the manager, that was something that we had identified. This year we can reduce it, but next year we'll probably need to put some money in there within our operating expenses to cover that. We expect to be able to draw down the rest of the CIP portion of that over the course of this year.
What town parcels do you see going on in the market?
So we're hoping very soon to be putting a sign out in front of Groton Heights. There's a large piece of property that we own on Gold Star Highway. There's the Sealy School, which we'll be having a meeting tomorrow night with the town council, talking about a possible agreement with a marketing firm on that piece of property. And then we're also working with the state. There's actually two very large signs sitting in our office now for the Mystic Oral School and Mystic Education Center. So we received a $50,000 grant from the state to market that property, to change the zoning, to do some public outreach, and that's something that's underway right now. We expect those signs to go up in the next couple of weeks. So and we've, in the meantime, we've been showing all of those properties, not so much the Sealy School, but all the other properties to numerous developers from all over the region. A lot of interest in those properties. The way that we generally go through this process is we get people very interested in it, and then once everybody's interested in it, then we'll issue an RFP, get responses so that all those potential developers have time to put together a team, come up with proposals. We're able to review proposals that best suit the needs of the town of Groton. We will bring those to the town council, and they'll decide which ones we want to move forward with.
Is the responses mostly residential, multifamily, business?
Each property is a little bit different. Groton Heights, we've had interest from office, from residential, from incubator type space, Mystic Oral School, institution, residential, kind of a mix of things. Also, the Gold Star Highway piece is probably going to end up more either an office or a mix of office retail.
Director Reiner, so in your dealings with the various groups who are coming here or looking at coming here, what is it about this area that's attracting them?
One, electric boats growth. People often look at the highway access that we have. We have water and sewer availability. Things that often attract businesses are workforce, availability of workforce and education, quality of life, sense of place. One of the reports that we've done, the market analysis, really focused on how in the future Groton needs to focus on it, the sense of place, quality of life that we have here. Something that is helpful that businesses will often look at are low taxes, and we have incredibly low taxes. I think is it 146th out of 149th, out of 169 municipalities in the state. I was talking to a business owner just last week who said a number of years ago he was looking at relocating to New London, and the taxes there were about double. That kept him in Groton. That level of a difference, but a little bit of a tax increase here or there, that's just another line item in their budget. So taxes are not one of the main reasons that people are or are not locating here. But again, we have very low taxes right now in the overall scheme of things for Connecticut. There's also a lot of potential for redevelopment opportunity here, and a lot of the initiatives that we've been working on. I should mention those. I don't want to just speak in the broader aspect. The tax increment financing program that we're working on, the website, just getting the marketing and the word out. People are realizing that there's great opportunity here. There's very low property values for the development potential, as well as the regulatory reform, making it easier to do a process. Other things that we've been working on this year that we're almost done with, growing in Groton, a doing business in Groton guide. That's something that that businesses are very interested in. The incentives that we have, which we just created a new incentive guide, have it on business incentives and assistance. These are things that certainly help attract a lot of the businesses. The market analysis that we did is something that businesses now understand what the needs are in town, so that helps them when they're looking for places to locate.
Are there any other questions for the director? Seeing none, we will vote on the amount of $1,247,174 for account 1046, Planning and Development Services. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously, 28-0-0. Thank you, Director Reiner.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the faith that you've put in our department. We appreciate it, and we're working hard to make things happen.
Okay.
Next account is account 1054, page 28 of your budget book. And the first one we'll do is 10545, service agencies. Which I believe is actually on page 209. What's that?
205?
205? Oh. Hang on.
Yep. Nope. It's on page, she's got page. Oh, no, which one? It's this one. It's on 210, page 210. No, 209.
Yeah.
209.
209. Account 10545.
It's the only one that wasn't there.
Service agencies.
Okay, just for 1 second. Service agencies, the committee moved the number of $65,150.
Is there a second? Representative Bailey, second. What was the rationale?
Well, we don't really have any because we didn't have anybody to talk to. So we decided to move the number forward and hope there would be some discussion on the floor.
So the manager's number was
Managers-
68,191.
Yeah.
And town council's number was the 65,150. Right.
Maybe Mark could help us a little bit with that one.
So that's the council number. Mark, you want to give some background on service agencies?
Well, as I think the RTM is aware, we solicit requests for funding in January. We receive applications. You do have copies of those applications in your Appendix A. You have additional information about each one of these agencies that have requested funding. We then have a staff committee headed up by Marge Von Dulis from Human Services, go through the applications and make a recommendation. So if you go to page 209, and you'll see the table there, and on the left-hand side, the name of the agency. Then you have approved for FYE 2017. These are the dollar amounts that were approved. The next column, requested, those were the dollar amounts that each one of the agencies requested. If you go all the way to the bottom, you can see that all of those requests totaled almost $100,000, $99,991. And then the committee made a recommendation to the manager for the 68,191. With respect to the council number, that was simply a reduction that somebody put on the floor. It wasn't directed at any specific agency. So if that's the number that ultimately gets approved by the RTM, my plan is to have the committee come back together again and make a determination. How is that reduction going to be shared or applied to the requests? It's a little bit over a $3,041 reduction.
Are there any additional questions on account 10545?
Actually, I have one. On the TVCCA, did they not make a request? They just made a request for Meals on Wheels?
Correct. They did not make a request And the Meals on, well, the Meals on Wheels, as you may recall, used to actually be within the Parks and Rec Department budget, and we've moved it out from that to put it in. There are some communities that do fund TVCCA. We have never done that. We have provided funding for specific programs, but there are, in fact, some communities in the region that, I don't want to say provide administrative money, but more operational dollars to TVCCA. We've never done that, I think primarily because we have, we do have our own social services department, and these other communities do not.
Thank you.
Any additional discussion on this account before we vote? Seeing none, we'll vote. All those in favor of $65,150 for account 10545, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? 3. No, merit for real. Motion carries 25-0-3. Next account, discount 10070, Southeastern Connecticut Council of Governments, on page 206 in your big budget book.
Sorry about that.
Regional agencies, that's page 2.
I'm sorry, was that Council of Governments?
Right.
Okay, I'm
Southeastern
sorry.
Connecticut Council of Governments, account 10070.
Thank you very much. Again, we didn't have anybody to talk with, but we felt that it was a fee that is normally paid. Each town pays a certain percent so that we can have a Southeastern Connecticut Council of Government, which does a lot of good. I'm sorry, I've got my explanation before the number. $16,349.
Second.
Anything else you wanted to say about it?
No, basically, it just keeps us part of that, which is very important. I mean, one of the highlights of that right now, if I remember correctly, Mark can help me with this, but the improvements that are being done in front of the submarine base was a joint agreement by the Connecticut Council of Governments to go forward, and they've contributed to that. And I think it's going to make an enormous difference on the entrance and the feeling as you go into the submarine base of Groton.
So Mark, what do we get for our $16,000 from these guys?
Well, the Southeastern Connecticut COG represents around 22 communities. The board of directors usually is the first selectman or the mayor or the manager from each one of the communities. There are issues that come up that they meet and talk about. The example that Leanne mentioned is we're seeing over time more and more state funding being funneled through the COG for projects in the region. The project, the Crystal Lake Road project, that was the first project that the COG approved. Basically, these are dollars coming to the region, and collectively, the board of directors of the COG solicited proposals from communities, and they chose our project as the most deserving project. Now, this is a couple years ago. There's also more recently a project that was submitted for a portion of Pequannock Road within the city of Groton. It's a $3 or $4 million project, and once again, the COG selected that along with a number of other regional, a number of other projects that have been submitted from member communities. It provides, at a minimum, it provides a forum by which the political leadership of the various communities can meet and discuss things. We do put together a legislative agenda on an annual basis and meet with our legislators. Lots of transportation types of projects, because some of you may recall the COG used to be a regional planning agency, and that was their primary focus 20 years ago, was transportation. But they're doing a lot more in terms of housing. We now do, for example, a natural mitigation regional project where each town has its own annex within a larger study. The COG coordinates that. So they are doing quite a bit for the $16,000 that we are providing them.
Thank you. Are there any other questions about this account? Seeing none, we'll vote. All those in favor of $16,349 for account 10070, Southeastern Connecticut Council of Government, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously, 28-0. Next one is account 10071, Southeastern Connecticut Enterprise Region.
The committee moved forward a number of $14,041.
Second.
Mr. Manager, can you also explain what we get from Sector?
Sure. Sectors, or its predecessor agency, has been around since around 1991, 1992. It used to be known as CTEC and CRED prior to becoming the Sector. They are a regional economic development organization, 501c3. Groton has been certainly one of the largest users of Sector over the years. They're really more of a marketing entity. They work with the state of Connecticut, and a lot of things coming from DECD are funneled through Sector instead of going to individual towns. In fact, just today I received notification that the updated comprehensive economic development plan has just been approved by the state. That's something that Sector has worked on for the last 6 to 9 months or so. That's really an opening for the region, Groton and other towns, to receive funding from EDA, federal EDA, Economic Development Administration. Pretty active board, very active committee structure. They are now located in Groton. They had for a while been up in Norwich, and then we're over in New London. They're actually now located at the very northern end of Thames Street in the city of Groton. That's where their offices are. Once again, it's a economic development marketing organization. The thought being that we're probably better off to work together with our other communities in the region to get the word out about the opportunities in southeastern Connecticut. We share a lot of leads with each other. We also share what properties, at the end of the day, if somebody, can't find a location in Groton, we certainly want to make sure that they stay in the region, and vice versa. If somebody is looking to go to New London but they can't find a site in New London, they'll send them over to Groton, see if we can find them a site. Just a little bit of history. This is the agency that provided the organizational structure back in 1993, 95, and 2005 to fight the BRAC battles, John Markowitz, and other folks who were involved in those BRAC battles over the years.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other questions on this account? Seeing none, we will vote on the amount of $14,041 for account 10071, Southeastern Connecticut Enterprise Region. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously, 28-0. Next thing, Southeast Area Transit Authority.
Just 1 second. Again, well, the committee moved a number of $88,211.
Second.
Again, we didn't have any representative from SEAT, and so we decided again that it was best. The committee was okay with the number, but we thought we would come here and perhaps there would be somebody here that could give us some explanation, but, so I can't defend it or not defend it.
Mr. Manager?
Sure. Well, Councilor Marasek and myself are on the SEAT Board of Directors, so I'll try to answer any questions that you have. As you may see, the town fee has gone down around $5,000 or so since last year. That's primarily a result of a comprehensive service area analysis that has been done in the last year or so. First time one has ever been done for the SEAT service area. Routes were laid out 30 years ago, and for the most part have not changed very much over time. In terms of getting a handle on ridership, where are people coming from, where do they want to go, and so forth. And that analysis, as I said, was done over the last year. The formula is basically the number of miles of service being provided, and also a factor for population. There's a lot of different formulas out there for transit district. This services a fairly large portion of southeastern Connecticut. There are 9 communities that are members of SEAT. There was a conscientious effort made maybe 3-4 years ago to get mayors and first selectmen and town managers, city managers involved in the board of directors, so that we had a better understanding of what was going on an annual basis with respect to the SEAT operation. And I'll stop there and try to answer any questions that you have.
Representative Kent?
Are there any utilization facts and figures on this? I've seen a lot of these buses, and I've never seen one that wasn't empty.
Certainly the study that was done, Representative Kent has a lot of that information. I did not bring it with me tonight, but I can certainly get you a copy. That was one of the issues that the study was looking at, is we do have, I mean, the Groton routes are pretty well, I won't say the buses are full, but there's a lot more people on many of the Groton buses than there are in other communities. Some of that has to do with, in order to, you know, we're going, for example, we're going through Ledyard to get to Norwich or to get to the casinos, but there aren't a lot of people in Ledyard getting on the bus. And so there's been a lot of debate and discussion about, well, who should be paying for those miles through Ledyard? Should Ledyard be paying? In fact, Ledyard actually stepped away from the table and canceled out of SEAT. They have recently come back in again. But that study does have lots of facts and figures. I should have grabbed it sitting right on the counter in my office, front counter in my office, and I'd be glad to get you a copy of that.
Do you remember what changes occurred in the town as a result of this study?
Yeah, well, there's quite a few changes that are being contemplated, particularly along the Route 1 and Route 12 area, and then also you know, Eastern Point Road, Shennecossett Road, and back. I mean, what happened over time, not just in Groton, but somebody would say, well, let's get to this development, and then this development, and then this development, and then all of a sudden, your headway, the amount of time it takes to make a loop really gets way out of whack. I mean, that's the delicate balancing act with this program, is you want to provide the service, which means you want to get to the developments or the areas in the community that may have potential ridership. But if it takes you 2 hours to make the loop, what's the point? Most people are not willing to stand around for 2 hours. There's also another item that has not been implemented at this point that people have been talking about for many, many years. Right now, the SEAT service is essentially a flag down service. I mean, I grew up in the Hartford area. I looked for the telephone poles with the white stripe around it. That meant it was a bus stop. There are no real bus stops. I mean, we do have areas in our shopping center area up at Groton Square in front of Benny's and so forth. And you may have the schedule, but you really don't know if you just missed the bus by a minute or if the bus is going to be there in the next 59 minutes. And that is something that the seat will be changing. Not every stop will be a bus stop, but at least a fair number of them will be, so that if the schedule says we're going to be there at 12:30 and you get there at 12:29, you know the bus will be there at 12:30 or a few minutes later, that they haven't come and already left. And I think that's a huge, huge improvement to the system.
What percentage of the costs are covered by fares?
Very small percentage. The vast majority is covered by the state of Connecticut, probably 70–80% of the total costs.
Is there any other discussion on this account? Seeing none, we will vote on the amount of $88,211 for account 10072, Southeastern Area Transit Authority. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? No.
Thank you.
Motion carries 26-1. And the last one, account 10073, Southeastern Connecticut Probate Court.
The committee moved a number of $13,433.
Second. Your Honor, would you care to come up? And please introduce yourself for the record, sir.
Nicholas Keppel, Judge of Probate. Evening.
The committee met with Attorney Keppel, had a very good discussion about the probate job and all that was done by it, and the fact that he actually adds quite a bit to the town taxes by some of the things that he does so well. So the committee was in favor, 7 in favor, no opposition.
Add in the sense of what I discussed with the committee is one of the things that I enjoy doing, frankly, is helping collect revenue. We don't pay taxes in the court, but we endeavor to help Groton and the other communities in the 4 towns that the court serves, make sure that if an estate owes one of the towns money, I won't approve the final accounting, and the heirs won't get their money until all the appropriate bills are paid, including town taxes. So over the years, we've heard from the tax collector that a particular property is still owed taxes, and we make sure that the fiduciary, the executor, executrix, knows that obligation has to be met before I'll approve the accounting and the distribution. So I mentioned to the committee, people don't think of the probate court in that sense, but it's not the primary, the primary function, but we end up serving as, we have this kind of a tax collection aspect, if you will, by virtue of making sure that the estate meets all of its obligations, including the town. Plus, as I've said to the council and here before, the court couldn't, my staff and I could not be happier with what a great host town Groton is. We thoroughly enjoy our working relationship with the various town departments with whom we work on a regular basis. So we're very grateful.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions for the judge? Representative Kent.
How are you and the other probate staff paid?
85% of the probate court system's budget is paid for by fees, and the rest is predominantly made up by the state of Connecticut, so long as there's monies available, and then a small percentage of our operational is borne by the respective, the 4 towns that we serve.
So is your figure salary fixed, or is it a percentage of the gross?
No, it used to be a percentage, but as part of the reforms and the consolidation that commenced in 2011, the probate court system was shrunk from 117 courts to 55 courts. And as part of that, 4 different levels of court, depending on size, were established. There were a whole lot of reforms, including attorneys as judges. You had to be, any judge who got reelected one more time who wasn't a lawyer could be reelected, could stand for reelection, but requirement that the judges be lawyers, smaller number of courts, and fixed salaries for the judges depending on the population served by the court. So we're a level 4 court because we serve 80,000 people. Editorially, I would add, the state of Connecticut could probably take some lessons from the regionalization of the court system, because it's turned out that, which has been a pleasant surprise, we thought that people from the 4 towns would be more frustrated with losing each had a probate court until 2010. And it's been quite remarkable. There hasn't been really a whisper of complaint, resistance, either from elected officials or the users of the court system. We're being so close down 117 for Ledyard and next door in Stonington. Even folks up on Northwest Corner Road in North Stonington haven't complained. So it's going to a smaller, more efficient, because it used to be that each court had their own payroll system and kept their books, and now it's all done through probate administration. And so the regionalization of the court system, which saved the state like $5 million a year, a substantial savings, could be a model for other governmental functions.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other questions for the judge? Seeing none, we'll vote. All those in favor of $13,433 for account 10073, Southeastern Connecticut Regional Probate Court, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously, 28-0. Thank you, Your Honor. So that was all the accounts that we have for tonight. But I did want to have a discussion about the issue with Mayor Flax. Came before us last week and stated that he had made a mistake, which I believe in adjourning instead of recessing their town council meeting, and subsequently $255,000 was voted in to the Board of Ed budget. And I believe on the 26th, I guess they voted legally, right, Mark? The entire number for the entire town budget, right? On the 26th?
The council, as their last action to date on the budget, was to take their totals and look at the revenues and come up with a potential mill rate, which will change ultimately when they set the mill rate towards the end of May.
Okay. So although I consider their meeting to be an illegal one, the second one, and Mayor Flax has said it as well, the town council did vote a total number. Are there any questions or any discussion about that? Representative Nugent.
Yes. So, as you know, I had a question on the, so to follow up, the number that the town council voted on in total on April 26th was $119,059,790, and included in that was an education budget of $74,747,001. And that figure came from that higher figure, $255,000 higher, came from what is that disputed second reconsideration meeting. Now, as we know, a citizen filed a Freedom of Information complaint claiming it was an illegal meeting. Now, my interpretation of Town Council, Mayor Flax was he said that yes, he made a mistake, he adjourned instead of recess, but that it was not his intent to hold an illegal meeting. So I would not venture to guess how the FOI would turn out. Now, I did verify with Mark today that as far as the Freedom of Information complaint, and I'll quote from his email if you don't mind. I'll read it accurately. No hearing has been held at this point. No decision has been rendered. So I believe that is the only legal jurisdiction that can declare the meeting illegal. So today we got an updated budget summary that had a new figure for the final town council, a lower figure, and that of $119,029,789, and the education budget was back to the first considered number of $74,492,000. And why I'm bringing this up is because Thursday we're going to be discussing and voting on the education budget. So it's very important is what the baseline, what your town council number is that you're starting with. And I don't feel that if the FOI has not made a decision, the town council voted on their budget, they can't change it at this point, that I don't see that we have a right to administratively change it and declare the meeting invalid. So I believe that the original town council numbers should stand, and that in our meeting tomorrow, the town council education number should be $74,747.01, and then we can have our debate and vote as to whether that number should be higher, lower, within the constraints that we have. So I'm requesting that our budget sheet go back to the original town council numbers.
Any additional discussion on that? Any additional discussion from clerk?
Oh, well, you want to take representatives first, or you want to hear from me?
Nobody raised their hand, so I'm sorry. Representative Massett.
I agree with Representative Nugent. And the other issue is that once we start changing numbers after the fact, that's a very, very slippery slope. I think the FOI Commission, because a complaint has been filed, the FOI Commission needs to vote or make a determination, as it were. So I do agree with Kathy.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I disagree with the, respectfully, disagree with the two representatives that just spoke. I think that the number that the town council approved when they adjourned, is the numbers that we should be dealing with. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Moderator. I have to say I concur with Representative Wilson for the basic fact that our democracy is at stake. If you look at how we run meetings, we have a doctrine that we follow, which is FOI, that you notice a meeting within the time frame allowed for a regular meeting, and also special meetings. It's a shorter time. And the agenda is noticed as to what is going to be at that meeting. So the public can enjoy freely part of democracy, to see what's happening. And that happened on the 21st. I wasn't at the meeting. I can only go by what people told me, and the tape was shut off at a certain time, and 20 some odd minutes later it was turned back on, and there was an adjournment earlier. So it was adjourned, the videotape was stopped, and they came back on and voted on something. And so I think it's simply, you have a proper vote prior to the adjournment, and this body owns the entire budget anyway, so you'll be able to vote, discuss, move amendments, vote again, so forth. But it's your total decision, not the council's anyway.
Mr. Manager, did you want to chime in on any of this?
Well, I certainly would agree with the clerk's last comment. I would encourage the RTM not to get yourselves all wrapped around the axle on this, because ultimately the council's done with the budget. You can use, I think the mayor came here the other evening simply to let you know that there may have been a mistake that was made. That was not his intention to adjourn. There was one counselor that did leave the meeting, but I think she needed to go home, and the rest of the council stayed there because they still had 2 other accounts to consider. So the words are the words. I don't think he was here to suggest one way or the other if the meeting, the second meeting, the so-called second meeting, was null and void. He just wanted to make sure you had the numbers in front of you. As I understand it, the Education Committee, the number that in all likelihood is going to get put on this white board up here is the Education Committee's number, which is higher than either of the 2 numbers that the council considered. So I'm not really sure there's much need to debate what the council did or didn't do. If you go changing those numbers, then what do you do, in my opinion, what do you do with the total number that the council set the mill rate to? I would encourage you not to go down that path. Hear what the committee has to say and go from there. In any instance, it sounds like it's probably going to require a 2/3 vote anyways. And ultimately, the RTM is has the final say on the budget. The council's role is done for the time being until you finish your budget deliberations. It then goes back to the council for them to set the mill rate. At that point, we'll be updating revenues. Hopefully, we'll be smarter about where the state is. Probably not, but hopefully we will be, and they'll establish the final mill rate.
Representative Oatbury.
Needless to say, I'm a little confused on this, but anyways, the question I'm wondering is, the numbers that came out today, who made the decision that those would be different than the ones we had previously?
The email that we had. It went to you.
Finance Director Landry might be able to answer that better. We just got the email.
We got we got the email.
That's correct. The numbers that Dawn is referring to, they did come from my office, and that was probably a mistake on my part. It was a misunderstanding from me, and we probably should have retained the council's numbers because the mill rate, the tentative mill rate has been set on the total budget that the council passed.
Representative Marley.
I just want to make it clear, I know it was said several times, but Councilor Barber did not go home for any other reason but for the fact that the meeting was adjourned. I was at that meeting. Mayor Flax did say, motion to adjourn. It was a voice vote. Per Robert's rules, the meeting was over. Councilor Barber left Councilor Morton and Nault were actually in the hallway prepared to leave before it was indicated that everything is going to start back up again. Councilor Barber was at her house less than a mile away from the meeting when she received a text message that said, hey, we're reconvening. After which she hopped in her car and went back. And if you can see in the minutes and in the video, she returned to the meeting. Like I said, I was there. I saw the motion to adjourn. It was voted on. Everybody left. That room was packed. It was standing room only, and everybody left. Hardly anybody was there except for the superintendent and one or two other members. So everybody who was there watching this meeting thought it was over. It wasn't a mistake. I appreciate everybody's comments, but to put the numbers in front of the RTM after the adjournment would be a slippery slope. Because at what point are we going to let a town council adjourn and then reconvene without notice to the public? Groton Town Charter says that all meetings are governed by Robert's Rules. Robert's Rules states that once a voice adjournment, it's over. Meeting's over. And in order to have another meeting, notice to the public is required. It was clear if you watch the video, there was no notice to the public. The public had left. Thank you.
Now I'll have my say. I'm troubled by this whole thing. Take out of the equation the question of what the money is for. Just picture a group of town councilors, and I think Mayor Flax is an honorable man, and I like the town council, but that's the town council right now. What we're doing is we're basically allowing a precedent whereby a group of the town council can meet, vote, they can say I adjourn the meeting, wait till everybody leaves, and vote again on something, and then pass their total budget, set the mill rate, and we're standing here going, what happened? And they say, it was a mistake. Sorry, I meant to say recess. Now again, in this particular circumstance, I believe that the mayor acted honorably and so did the town council. But I'm not thinking about this particular circumstance. I'm thinking about the next time, 5 or 6 years from now, or 2 years from now, or whenever. You know, the difficulty is if we let the rules slide for the people that we like, then what do we do when we got people that we don't like and they're doing something we don't like? And they go, well, you let those guys do it. I think it's a bad precedent. I think that it was an unintentional, illegal meeting by all the definitions. You know, the Freedom of Information Committee is not going to have a chance to vote on this, but again, you have to ask yourself, is it okay with you that people in the town council, actually 5 out of 9 in the town council can vote, and then they can go later on and approve their budget and set a mill rate before anybody can act on an illegal meeting? It's a bad precedent. So, does anybody else have any discussion? Representative O'Bray.
I was just wondering if maybe an information sheet on this should go out as to, you know, well, we have this, but maybe a sheet of what it was, what it got changed to, just to make it absolutely clear. The council meeting, you know, okay, like you said, what happened isn't right, and it should be, it has to go forward with the FYE and receive a decision from them. But I think that to change the numbers was incorrect, and I think something should go out with the correct number. And I know you worked very hard, and you made a decision, and I owe you taxes, so I hope you don't get too upset. But, but we got to do it right. Thank you very much.
Is there any other discussion on this issue? Representative Nugent.
Could I just ask what's the purpose of having an FOI commission if it isn't to resolve these issues when there is a complaint?
Because FOI requests can happen, they can happen anytime during the year. You know, for any meeting of any type. It's not just for our budget session. But the bottom line is, they only meet a few times a month. They're not going to get to this question. So it's not that I'm disagreeing or agreeing with what the Freedom of Information Act Commission is saying. Somebody's saying we're not going to have any input from them in time for the 18th. However, I looked at the tape, I was at the meeting, I saw it adjourn, and the question is whether, with all due respect, we want to honor a motion, a vote that was taken in all appearances show is an illegal meeting. Whether intentional or unintentional. That's not the point.
So we're in effect acting as the FOI commission for a meeting that the town council held. So you don't have to reply to that, but I just respectfully dissent from this decision. Thank you.
Representative Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. May I make a request to anybody in this room, the finance, Cindy Laundrie, clerk, moderator, that perhaps that we could get the adjournment numbers updated in the draft budget summary appropriation sheet for fiscal year 2018. What I'm asking for is what was the number prior to adjournment?
I think that went out in email today, right? The numbers prior to the adjournment?
When Bruce was here, we handed it out to
Right.
everybody.
It was the printout that gave the numbers.
It's on, yeah, it's on the sheet, but I emailed everybody.
We'll make sure you get those numbers, Representative Bailey.
We emailed those this morning, so you have, the latest updates is from today, and it does have those numbers on it. When we received them from the Director of Finance, we changed our numbers, sent it out.
Would that be the number of $75,402,131?
Yes.
Or would it be the
yes
74747,001?
It's the Town Council 74492,000.
Okay. Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Is there any other comment? Representative Wells.
I'm just a little confused. Did the council finish the work that it had to do when it did this adjournment that everybody thought that they thought wasn't an adjournment, but probably was? Did they leave? Was there any other? Did this other work? Was it? Did they leave anything? Have they left things undone of their job? Or are you just like, well, we said adjourn and it's over?
There was additional things that had to be done because the reconsideration of the school budget wasn't the only thing. They had a couple of other accounts, right?
Right, we had the capital reserve accounts because they acted on the Board of Education CIP project, so we had to make adjustments to the contribution to the capital reserve as well as the total projects that had to be adopted.
I'm just curious, is the council hanging, or have they actually finished their work and we can just, perhaps we'd have to ignore what they did after this adjournment?
The council was finished, and the tentative mill rate that was set was based on the final numbers at the end of that night, at that evening.
So they've done their work.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not sure how many times they can come in and go, oops, we really did.
I understand.
I'm just saying, is there anything left undone as a result of this?
No, not to my knowledge. They're done.
Regardless of what the numbers are, is their work finished?
I don't think there's anything left undone with the council, right? They're completely finished. Is there any other discussion before we recess? All those in favor of recessing, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? We'll see everybody on the 18th.